Gaming has come a long way from where it is now, and it is crazy to think that it feels just yesterday we had moved to the 8th generation of game consoles, and we now have all these gaming consoles right in front of us from all these times of gaming, and each generation comes to amaze us every time with each innovation. So today, I thought we would look at what happened during the first three generations and what new things happened during those times. So, let's get started. If we're gonna dive into how the different gaming generations revolutionized the gaming industry, we need to go where gaming really started, in the 1970s, where technology was not really advanced and everything about gaming was very new. And it had not really evolved into the games we see today, and all this fantasizing stuff did not come into did not come into play until later once gaming gained a little bit of traction during the arcade days. And this new technology didn't come until and all these brand new technologies didn't come into the second or third generation. The first console that ever came out during that time was the Magma Box Odyssey. And at this time, this was the first ever home console that the first generation was granted. Technology Technology was really simple back then, and there were many limitations as this was the first generation of gaming, and it was still relatively new at this time. But as time went on, this type of entertainment improved as the years went on, and most games that were released on these first consoles were just ported from the arcades, and you only could play them once before you had to pay for a new console. And um, also during this generation, there was not many sprites at all, considering that the hardware limitations were the main factor during this, and well, there was really nothing developers could do until like the second or third generation of gaming. As you got into the second generation of gaming, you saw things improve slightly. And in this generation, there had been a lot of games and consoles released during this time in the 1970s and early 80s. Many companies wanted to enter the video game market, but that had come with many consequences that would haunt the gaming industry forever. As the second gaming generation experienced a mixed legacy, the video game crash of 1983 was a factor into that because there was a saturation of crappy games during this time. And plus, many developers were kind of confused on where the direction of gaming was going to go, and that littered the market with many games that were very unnecessary and very unstrategic. Now, you might think that the first two gaming generations were not really that good, per se, but remember what these first two generations were going for. These first two generations were a start in gaming where there was not really a lot of hardware, where there was not really much to be desired at this time, and plus, many gaming developers, uh, many gaming developers didn't have the technology during back then, and this was a start to where gaming could blossom into a beautiful transformation that we see now from games nowadays and today. So I would like to switch from talking about the first and second generation to the more highly regarded third generation, or better known as the 8-bit era of these games. This was the next generation where we saw a drastic turn in how games are compared to the first and second generation. We start to see very significant improvements going on in the third generation, where technology was starting to catch up and many new consoles were starting to come out as well. The NES, which was from Nintendo, the Sega Genesis, which was from Sega, and those are the big consoles that most people wanted, including kids at the time, and um, and it turns out that they were a very major success. Um, at this time, many companies wanted a market share, but mostly Sega and Nintendo, since those are the big two companies that wanted, and like their games were very successful back then, compared to how they were back in the day when Sega was still competing and their own company thrived on their own consoles, unlike today where Sega is just now producing like games, I believe. But Nintendo is still their own like IP, like their consoles. So yeah. But many things went on that changed how video games were even back in the day, and it was very significant to what we got in the next generations few in the next few generations forward.